I'm going to sit down because I'm incredibly lazy. So, making memories. What's the point? Over the last sort of 10 or 15 years, I've had the opportunity to give this some real thought. I remember being on holiday in Germany, learning to ski all over again. And I sat on my wheelchair by the hotel swimming pool. And I really wanted to get in the water for a bit of a swim. Eventually, after looking at that water for what seemed like ages, I slipped off my wheelchair and bum shuffled to the water's edge. And I could feel people staring at me. I must have looked a mess. As I slipped into the water, I could feel the glances turn away and the conversations start up again. They couldn't see me beneath the water. So I decided to try and swim a length. Now, it was only a 15-meter pool. I got to the other side of that pool, and I'd done a lot of spinning round and a little bit of drowning, but I was there. So I decided to swim back again. I'd swam 30 meters, and I was exhausted. But I knew at this point that if I trained myself and got stronger, it was something that I could probably do a little bit of as I got better. So how do I find myself in this position? Well, I have to rewind 5 months. I was in Afghanistan working as a combat medic with the Coldstream Guards. Monday, the 26th of October, 2009, was the day that changed my life forever. And I remember waking up in the morning about 3 o'clock. We were going to leave the safety of our compound to go on an extended patrol for 3 or 4 days. As I woke up, I grabbed my kit, my weapon, my body armor, my helmet, and went outside. I didn't want to wake up the rest of the guys. I made myself some breakfast, I sorted myself out, and put my kit on and walked round to the front entrance of our compound to wait for the rest of the guys. We were all ready to leave, and everywhere we went in Afghanistan, we went in single file. We followed the man in front who was armed with a metal detector, and it was his job to make decisions where we were going to go and where we weren't going to go. Now, we left a little bit late that morning because our interpreter decided that being in his sleeping bag was more important than going for a walk. So we left a little bit later. As we left camp, I found myself in the middle of that file of men, probably the 11th or 10th man in that line. I got about 150 meters outside our patrol base where I activated an improvised explosive device. I was thrown in the air and landed on the floor unconscious. And I remember being unconscious because there was a few questions that kind of appeared in my head. Am I injured? Is anybody else injured? And can I treat them? Now, this felt like an eternity, but it was actually probably only a few moments. I woke up, and amongst the dust and the smoke and the gunfire, I could see that my life had changed forever. My pants and my trousers had been blown off. My right leg was no longer there. My left leg was irretrievably damaged, and I had a few other injuries, which included my arm, which I couldn't prop myself up with. It was broken and dislocated. I was in a really bad way. And at this point, I wasn't even a priority. I was on the bottom of the list of priorities. Eventually, a plan was made to come and get me, and they decided that they couldn't really do much for me there, so they put me on a stretcher and carried me back towards a patrol base, which is where they started to save my life with tourniquets and bandages. Now, at this point, they'd already called for a medical emergency response team to come and pick me up, the Chinook with the 2 propellers. It was already in the air to go and pick up an Afghan national soldier that had been shot. My wounds were considered worse, so they diverted the helicopter to me. I remember the helicopter landing, and I remember being loaded onto the helicopter. It was only a short hop to Camp Bastion. I was unloaded onto an ambulance, and I remember the short drive to the emergency department. As I was carried in, the bright lights dazzled me, And I remember the clinical team, all the doctors and nurses and the medics descend on me like a team of locusts as they checked my bandages and my tourniquets, and I was prepared to go through to surgery. And that's pretty much all I remember of that Monday morning. By Tuesday, I was back in the UK having more surgery up in Selly Oak in Birmingham. I had more surgery on the Wednesday. I was an induced coma at this point. I woke up on that Friday, and my wife was at the end of my bed, and there was a nurse beside of me. And my arm was sort of strapped up, and I remember being really bleary-eyed, and I couldn't really see very well, and I was in a bit of a bad state. But I knew that I was alive, and I thought to myself, things are going to be okay. And I wanted to demonstrate some sort of gratitude to the only clinician that I could do, which was this nurse beside me. So I started sort of like signaling this nurse, and she wasn't sure what I was doing. So she asked Marissa what I was up to. And she said, I think he's trying to high-five you. And I was like... So for the next 5 weeks, I was in hospital and having lots of surgery. But it gave me time to think about stuff. So what did I think about? Well, I can tell you what I didn't think about. I didn't think about my prized Game Boy I had when I was a kid, which I saved up money to go and purchase second-hand. That thing never left my grip. I didn't think about my first mobile phone I had, which was probably a Nokia of some sort. I didn't think about my laptop that I bought or any of the cars I ever had. I didn't give them one thought at all. Possessions didn't seem to matter to me at that time. So what did I think about? I thought about that time when I was a Boy Scout learning how to abseil down in Portland Bill, near Weymouth. I remember it was a really, really warm day, and what we'd do is we'd have a competition to see who could take the fewest jumps down the side of that cliff. I thought about learning to dive off the coast of Croatia in those beautiful, crystal clear, warm waters, searching for fish and exploring underwater. I thought about the first holiday I had with my fiancée, my future wife, Marissa. We went to Tunisia. And we actually escaped off into the desert. And we saw where Luke Skywalker lived in his subterranean home. We went to where they filmed The English Patient at this amazing oasis. I thought about that time when I learned to parachute in Canada, jumping out of a perfectly serviceable plane. And that exhilaration of leaping out and then soon finding myself underneath the canopy and drifting down and seeing as far as the eye could see. An incredible experience. I remember my honeymoon, and we went to Kenya. And we saw giraffes and hippos. We saw zebras. We saw that many elephants, we got bored of seeing elephants. We were lucky enough to come across a pride of lions. I remember going down the Athabasca River in Canada on a Canadian kayak for 5 days. Every night, we'd find somewhere to camp, put up our tents, or even sleep out in the open, light a fire, chat, and look at the stars. One time, our instructors, our guides, took us out of our Canadian kayaks and walked us back up the river. And I remember, as we walked through, we could feel that coldness against our ankles. But then as we walked further up the stream, we could see bubbles coming up beneath the river. And we realized we're walking into a hot spring. An amazing experience. How the guides knew it was there, I'll never know, but an amazing experience. So these are all the things I used to think about when I was in my hospital bed. I was only 33 at the time, but I was glad that I'd done all those things in my life at that point. I never thought about all those possessions I had. I never gave them one thought. Now, like I said to you, I was only in hospital for 5 weeks. And I was in Germany learning how to ski. And that was really the start of my journey, because I remember being on a really shallow slope. I shouldn't have been over in Germany learning to ski. My arm was still broken. It was pinned, but I shouldn't have been there. I didn't tell them that, though. That bank remember being really, really scared, sat in this chair. But I got to the bottom of that hill, and for the rest of the week, I learned how to ski again. I got airborne. Sometimes I made that jump. Sometimes I ended up face first in the snow, but it was a learning process. And it opened the door for me to try other things. So in 2012, a group of 8 of us decided to do the race across America. 4 of us were on handbikes and 4 on normal bikes, but all of us were disabled in some way. And in fact, there's only one functioning leg in the whole team. We started in San Diego and cycled all the way over to Annapolis in Maryland. I remember cycling across the Rockies and the Appalachian Mountains. I remember cycling across Kansas, and it's not flat, it's undulating. I now know why Dorothy left, and I never want to go back. I remember learning how to skydive again. Now, I wasn't confident enough to do it on my own. I did it as a tandem. But as soon as I landed, I said I wanted to go back up again. An amazing experience. Now, from that time I learned to swim again, I've really taken swimming to another level for myself. We had a swimming pool built at Headley Court with public money that was donated by Help for Heroes. And I'd sneak up there after lunch. In fact, I'd have my lunch, I'd wolf it down, rest for a little bit, and I'd go up there early. I must have swum in that swimming pool hundreds of lengths. I must have swum in there hundreds of kilometres in the 4 years I was at Headley Court. In the evenings, when I was strong enough, I went down the road to Heron Lake. And this was the beginning of my open water journey. So some of the staff and some of the patients would meet there in the evenings. And to begin with, I might only be able to swim 750 meters or a kilometer. But as I got stronger, I got quicker, and I could go further. And actually, eventually, I could just go on my own. And I've constantly returned to Heron Lake because I feel that's where my journey started. So over the years, I really got the bug and entered loads of competitions or events. The first time I swam Brownsea Island, it wasn't very successful. I completed it, but I didn't know where I was going, which was ridiculous because I was swimming around an island. I managed to cover my goggles in Vaseline so I couldn't see where I was going. I got seasick because parts of the island, it's always quite tidal and it's a bit rough, so I got seasick. But I eventually got round to the other side. And I've done Brownsea Island a few times. It's an amazing event to do. So since then, I've entered the Dark 10K, which is a river, it's an estuary. So I thought it was going to taste nice. I didn't think it was going to taste revolting, as seawater does, and it was revolting. Last year, I swam Coniston and Ullswater. I've been lucky enough to swim Windermere a few times too. Now, Windermere is 11 miles long. It's a 17-kilometre swim. And when I first did it, I really didn't know if I could complete it. But I decided to take every mile, every kilometre, and see where I got. When I got in that water, I really wanted to ask the question whether it was possible for anybody to do this. And I thought to myself, if they can swim 3 or 4 miles, then anybody could swim Windermere. It's a truly epic event. After 6.5 hours of being in that water, I remember coming to the finish line, and I was absolutely exhausted. And everybody else walked out the water up to the finish line. I had to bum shuffle out with my arms. But the crowd got me through and got me up and out of the water. So before I finish my talk, I want to go back to the idea of making memories. So when I was lying in my hospital bed, that's sometimes all I had. The ability to think back of the things I'd already done and make plans for the future. And I really didn't know what life held for me, but I knew that I'd experienced so much in my life over the years that there were possibilities. Even though I'd have to make changes, there were possibilities of what I could achieve. There were some dark times for me in the hospital, but those memories really helped me. So while I was in my hospital bed, with my thoughts, my ideas, and my memories, I could turn those ideas into action. And that's what I did. Thank you very much for listening to me.